Welcome to Rugby AM, and it's a bit of yee-haw this evening as I've just landed literally back from Toronto. What a great journey, and we've got an extended game day part 2 as we give you a taste of what Toronto's got to offer for Rugby League. Jonesy, firstly, mate, congratulations. At 37-year-old, you've come runner-up in Player of the Year for Leeds Rhinos, even though you missed a massive chunk of season with a couple of injuries.
Yeah, look, I think it goes to show how tough this season's actually been for us guys, but always a privilege. I'll always give my best. My best isn't always good enough, but I'll always try it. Simo, but well done to Richie Mile, who finished top of that line, and what a good season he's had. And Tommy Briscoe as well, mate, was the second runner-up, came third, and he's been outstanding, super strong this year, and being a big player for us. But sorry to see a lot of lads go as well. Jimmy Kynhorst, Joel Moon. Joel Moon's really looked after me over the years, and he's going to give me one of his shirts. I'm going to put it on the wall. Yeah. And I'll just really quickly tell you why. Now, I, as a back rower, defend next to Joel Moon, and Joel Moon has probably had 3 conversations with me since he come. He's a really quiet lad. He's a really quiet kid, but there'll be those moments in the game when he'll see that I've done 3 or 4 tackles on trot, and he'll just go like that. He'll just give me a wink, nod to the floor, which means you stand here and I'll swap with you. And he'll go through and technically, arguably one of the best defenders I've ever played with.
He's awesome.
So he'll smash some back rowers, some forwards for 3 or 4 tackles. They kick ball over at last, and then we'll just swap places. And that little breather there is just him looking after his mate. And then you never ever want to let him down because of it, and that's that altruistic, benevolent nature that we've had at the club, and I'll really miss him. Ryan Hall as well, obviously a world-class player, but looking forward to seeing him in the NRL.
Well, we've got a special guest today, and it's someone you've worked with a number of occasions in your BBC guys. Yeah. Tell us a bit about today.
Well, I love Dave Woods. Dave Woods. Dave Woods.
The voice.
I was looking around when he said there's a special guest.
The voice of Rugby League. Dave's looked after me and given me plenty of opportunities to help me out with telling the stories of Rugby League. And you mentioned Dave took over Ray French way back in the day, and I grew up listening to people like Ray French, and he was like the nostalgic voice of Rugby League, the Challenge Cup, and before then, you know, I'm a big fan of Eddie Waring from what I've learned since then. So Dave, just tell us a little bit about your journalistic career. How did you get into Rugby League, and how big a job is it that you've got right now?
Well, I was 2 years old when my dad took me to my first ever game of rugby league, so I've no memory of that game, but I've no memory. I grew up as a Wigan fan. My dad was a Wigan fan. My dad, we're from Bolton, which is not rugby league territory, and my dad grew up as a Bolton Wanderers fan. And as a teenager, early 20s, he went watching Leigh against Wigan, and Wigan had just signed some player that you've probably never heard of called Billy Boston. And my dad went, wow. And I think it was more or less his first rugby league game. Wow, Billy Boston. So he ended up being a Wigan fan, and because he was a Wigan fan, he used to go out socialising in Wigan, and he met my mum, who's from Wigan. And they got married, and I came. So I always say, if Wigan hadn't signed Billy Boston, I might not be here.
I love it.
Yeah, but always been a massive. And growing up in Bolton, you know, and went to school in Bolton, there was me and my mate Kev, and we were the only rugby league fans in our school. So we became best mates because we were the only rugby league fans, and everyone else was kicking a football around, and we were trying to pick it up, and you know, we're making up songs about people you've probably genuinely never heard of. Billy Mellin, do you remember Billy Mellin, second row forward? Terry Hollingsworth, you'd have enjoyed playing against Terry Hollingsworth, and people like that. So so I always wanted to be a journalist. I read a book when I was 16, and I won't go into the story because it's dead boring, but I read a book when I was 16 by an author who was a journalist, and I liked it so much I thought I want to do what he does, and he was a journalist, so I thought that's what I'm going to do. And rugby league was a way in, and you know, I've managed to share the 2 passions of journalism and rugby league for 30 years.
Can I ask you how hard it was to step into Ray French's shoes?
Oh, massive. It's like nobody else cares, but 1958, the BBC broadcast the Challenge Cup final for the first time ever to the nation. They'd done it a few times previously to London and Birmingham, bizarrely, but 58 was the first time they broadcast the Challenge Cup final to the nation, and Eddie Waring was a commentator, and Eddie was a commentator all the way through to 81, I think it was, and then Frenchie took over and was a commentator all the way through to 2008, and I took over in 2009. So there's only ever been 3 of us who commentated on the BBC on a channel.
That's an elite club.
Well, it's not so much elite.
It's an elite club, right? That's an elite club.
It feels magical to be part of that, you know, that there's only been 3 of us. But Frenchie, he's a great mate, was a great mate, and you know, I've always looked up to Frenchie, and just a brilliant bloke. You know, if you could like get stuck in a lift with anyone, I'd want to get stuck in the lift with Frenchie, because the stories he tells, the memories he's got, the wisdom he's got about rugby league is just fantastic.
Talk to us about the Challenge Cup, because the Challenge Cup in that period from 81 to where it is now,
Yeah.
we've seen it in a way the demise of the competition in the eyes of the rugby league fan. What do you put it down to, and how are we going to get it back to where it should be?
Oh, I think it's multifaceted. I mean, I went to my first Challenge Cup in '74 when I was -3, and just going down to London, just going to London was like a big thing, and it's not now. So it's lost a bit of that. It's lost a bit because fans can go to. There's loads of events now. Rugby League's blessed with loads of big events. Magic, Grand Final. You get a trip to Perpignan every year. So there's things that fans can do en masse and make a real weekend of it. Whereas once upon a time, it was Wembley. That was your big event that you planned for all year. You hope your team got there. If they didn't, it was. I went in '74. I think it was '84 before Wigan got there. So, but me and my dad used to go down every year watching whoever was playing, and it's lost a bit of that. It's blooming expensive to go to London now, is it? And when you get to Wembley, it's expensive to buy tickets, and to feed and drink, and people you're taking down there as well. So there's a lot of reasons why it's lost a bit of that. And the Grand Final's become the big showpiece event. Yeah. So the Challenge Cup final is not Jonesy will tell you that, I should imagine, although you're of that vintage, that you probably still think the Challenge Cup final. But I think most of the younger players now would say winning the Grand Final is a bigger deal than winning the Challenge Cup final, whereas once upon a time that one-off big match was the Challenge Cup. So I think there's lots of ways of fixing it. Move it back, June, tamper with the competition. So, you change ways that you get there. Maybe move it away from Wembley. Maybe stick it at Wembley. Who knows?
There's a lot of history, heritage and romance in the Challenge Cup. We could argue that this year's been a little bit of that, because we've seen Catalans make history by winning it. First French team to do so. What is the most memorable or romantic moment of your Challenge Cup career?
Great question.
I mean, '85 was the best final, 28-24. You can watch them tries. John Ferguson he actually sidesteps. Is it O'Hara? Kemble? Not sure, but he sidesteps him in mid-air. He's actually sidesteps him. He's beating him in mid-air. He has to lead to catch it. And then he scores the other one in the second half. And Sean Edwards bursts down the middle. Brett Kenny down the corner. And then the Luluai try at the end. So that '85 was probably the best final to watch. Best moment. Sheffield winning it in '98 was fantastic, absolutely fantastic against Wigan, because John Keir's a big mate of mine and he was coach of Sheffield that day, so that was pretty terrific. I think when Salford beat Wigan, Wigan went 88-95, winning every final, and then the year after they drew Salford, and it was a Sunday afternoon at the Willows. McAvoy was playing. Who else was playing for Salford? I can't remember. Gary Jack might have been a bit too early for Gary Jack. But they beat Wigan, and that was and being there on the day that Wigan were finally beaten, that was pretty magical as well. But this year, I think, has been from a commentary point of view, this year's been the best, because it's been the best story. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, but the Catalans went down to Barcelona this last week,
unbelievable.
and they've been invited to play Wigan at the Nou Camp. Wigan against Catalan Dragons, a game of rugby league at the Nou Camp. I know they played in Barcelona before, but that was at the Olympic Stadium. This is going to be at the Nou Camp.
Yeah.
And it's Barcelona Football Club who are saying, come and play here. Now, if they'd have lost to Warrington in that final, that wouldn't have happened. But because they win, that level of recognition and that profile for rugby league is just absolutely fantastic.
Well, their Twitter followers and the whole followers have just skyrocketed since they've won it. They've had a huge uplift in followers.
Well, in this show, we're going to talk about expansion. Obviously, we're going to see a great feature over in Toronto. But how much potential is there, Dave, in south of France? Because I've listened to some of your podcasts, I've read some of what you've written, and this idea that two enemies almost in south of France came together to form Catalan Dragons. Yeah. How big could that be?
Well, we know the potential's there because we've seen it in history. Yeah. I mean, basically in the 1930s, French rugby union was in a mess. England didn't want to play against them in what was the Four Nations at the time. I'm not sure. They were banned from playing international because they were horrible on the field. I think there were people getting killed in matches. It was that bad.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
So they brought rugby league. Gallier took rugby league to France as an alternative to rugby union, and everyone loved it. And it just became wow. It became
the first professional sport in France.
Yeah, yeah.
True.
And it just became a fantastic spectacle, and crowds were massive. Then the Second World War came along. The Vichy government, and all that history, banned rugby league because they had rugby union sympathisers in the Vichy government, banned rugby league. But then it grew again after the war. So 1951, and I've seen photographic evidence of this, 1951, a French team went to Australia and beat every Australian team, touring team, club teams, international team, won 1951, came back to Marseille and had a ticker-tape reception through Marseille. This is the French rugby league team. There were hundreds of thousands of people there throwing ticker tape at them, and they all had their own. It wasn't in a big bus. They all had their own individual open-top car, every single player. And
wow.
it was like a cavalcade through the city of Marseille. And this ticket, and that was 1951. And the French Rugby League themselves, kind of, because they didn't embrace television and one or two other reasons, Rugby League faded again. But the third wave is on its way. So we had the 30s, we've had the 50s,
I love it.
and now the third wave. You know, Catalan win. Yeah, I mean, when Catalan came into the competition, you might remember Villeneuve and I'm trying to think of the other place. Villeneuve.
Paris were in there?
No, Toulouse. Villeneuve and Toulouse both applied to come into Super League at that stage, and it was Catalan that got the vote. So we know that Toulouse are there or thereabouts this year, possibly won't get promoted, but, you know, next year they're going to be pushing on. You know, if you have 2, 3, 4 French teams in there, and, you know, millionaires, the idea is that French rugby, rugby union, is the most funded in the world because of all these millionaires who throw money at it. And there's just a suggestion that 1 or 2 of those might be getting a bit disenfranchised, and maybe rugby league could be an alternative for them. Look at you two, you like 2 kids at Christmas.
It's interesting because we're seeing now like Lemieux trying to get Escaré from Wigan. And
he's staying at Wigan though, isn't he?
He's staying at Wigan, yeah, but those French teams now are recognising that there's players out there on the radar, and they're trying to build that. I know I've got a couple of mates who played for Alba this year, and they've loved it over there, love the lifestyle, travelling around France and going to games on a weekend, and the way they do it in that division, they give them enough time off to enjoy the lifestyle, but then they're playing a competitive competition and it's getting better, and because they don't have the quota system, they're getting a lot of Aussies who can't get into Super League, who are still good players. There's a kid called Beasley. I think Albi's a great prop, but he just can't get over here because of visa stuff. And it's just interesting because that competition's growing as well on an underbelly in France.
It's not all rosy. I think they've got the financial problems. Carcassonne is one of the famous clubs. They had horrific financial problems recently. I think they went bust at the end of last year. So where they come from, and I think the French president, I think the politics of French rugby league is, you know, makes ours look like a fairy tale, you know, because I think there's a lot of stuff going on politically going on behind the scenes. So, but they need nurturing, they need encouraging, and Catalan's win has done that.
Let's go over now to the Sheffield Eagles as Oliver Davis takes on the Resource What Bite Challenge. Let's see how he gets on.
3, 2, 1, jump!
Hey, let's go!
Jonesy, a bit of a disappointing score there. 106.
But did they have it on a slope or what? Did they just pedalling uphill? What was going on there? I don't know, I wasn't there. It's hard what bike.
You said you were going to do it at the end of the season.
If you're not come down.
You said you were going to do it at the end of the season to try and get under a minute.
The knee was a bit
so I reckon this week we'll get him on the what bike.
The knee's a bit sore, isn't it?
It's your last game this weekend, and we're going to talk now about the top 8 because we're going into semi-final time, Dave. Which competition do you think is better this year, the qualifiers or Super 8s?
Well, at the moment, you've got to say the qualifiers, haven't you? Because there's all that uncertainty. I think the top 8 comes into its own when you get the 2 semi-finals, because I think they're going to be fantastic semi-finals. You know, Wigan, Cast, too close to call. Saints, Warrington, you know, you'd probably say Saints at the moment, but you know, Warrington could still have a sting in the tail. But those middle 8s at the moment, they're crazy. I mean, Leeds have got 10 points. Yep. They've won 5 out of 6. This is your Leeds. 9th in the table. I've forgotten you played for them. 9th in the table. Won 5 out of 6. You could still get relegated.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to do. You're not going to do. It'd be unlikely, but mathematically, you could still get relegated.
Yeah, somebody on 10 points could end up in that £1 million game. Absolutely crackers. London doing a great job. Toulouse doing a great job. And Toronto all beating Super League opposition. Dave, do you think it's been a good spectacle? I know we're going to change next year. We're getting rid of these middle eights, but are you pro change?
You know what? Yeah, I think what we're going to have next year is going to be brilliant.
Yeah.
Because that top 5 keeps everyone interested, and the fact that you've got one going down, you know, that keeps the season alive for a long time. Because I mean, at the split after 23 games, Leeds had a chance of making the 5. If it had been a top 5 competition this year, you'd have still had a chance at a crack at a grand final. So it keeps people interested. And what I really love about it is the fact that they're keeping promotion and relegation, but the Championship's kept on it because they're having a top 5 as well. Because if you thought it was just top of the table goes up, then you know there's no to stop a big spending Bradford or Toronto this year just spending their way up. But now, because it's a top 5, Lee this year, if it had been a top 5 this year, Lee might not have imploded the way they have because they would still have had a chance, and he'd have made them one of the favourites because they were in great form. It was the start of the season that did for them. So they'd have been one of the favourites. So I think top 5 is going to be brilliant next year.
I think it's interesting because Derek Beaumont said to me, he said, with this change now, it gives the Championship clubs a better chance because they don't have to spend 1.8 million.
No.
So they only have to be the best team in the Championship. They don't have to beat 4 Super League teams now. So it makes it more sustainable as a club. So you could spend £1 million maybe in the Championship for a big backer like a Derek Beaumont or a Marwan or somebody like that. They might think, I don't want to spend £2 million of my own money or £5 million like Marwan's spent in his time in Rugby League, but then get up with a team that can develop. Like Toronto, for me, being there this week has impressed me because you've seen the growth from League One to Championship, and they're going to go again. They're going to re-sign, and Ricky Lotelli coming in. I don't think anyone realises how good a player he is. It's like I've watched a lot of him this year at Cronulla Sharks, and he's a genuine starter every single week for Cronulla. Yeah. He's not a fringe player. He's like a star centre. He'll be one of the best players in Super League next year, without a doubt, if they get to Super League.
What's been your thoughts on Toronto before we get into a great feature? Because expansion's always been a big part of Rugby League, and you've got those Northerners who don't like it if people don't eat Yorkshire puddings or pies or drink cups of tea. But we're going to go across a big sea as well, to Canada, and this great new entity that is Toronto. What's your thoughts on them?
I think it's fantastic for the game. You've got to worry if they were coming in and taking a slice of the Super League money. Then you'd say, oh, but they're not. They're self-funding, aren't they? They're going to self-fund.
Why shouldn't they?
Well, what do they bring? I mean, I'm not anti. I think Toronto's fantastic.
Yeah.
But if you water it down with too many overseas clubs that aren't bringing something in, so you could argue Catalan Dragons. What are they bringing to the TV deal? Because Sky don't sell any satellite dishes in Perpignan.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make it more attractive for Sky because Catalan are in. It makes it it makes it a greater league, a more kind of wow league because Catalan are in. But on that, when you're doing the hard nuts and bolts of the finances, does Catalan being in make a difference? So the fact that Toronto, if they come up, are self-financing is brilliant. And we were talking about France earlier. If we can get a second French team in, great. But then we need to start selling TV rights in France and start selling TV rights in North America. Yeah. So that's bringing into the collective pot. I think that's where we've been. I think Dublin's been talked about, hasn't it? And Red Star Belgrade's been talked about.
We met him. He's been on the show. He's brilliant.
But we have to be careful about what are they bringing. What are they bringing to the collective pot when they come in? I
totally agree with you, but I also think that from being at Toronto, they've got to be supported. And he might, David Argyle might have billions of pounds, billions. Who knows what he's got? But it's got to wash its face one day.
Yeah.
And the way to do that, if they don't take the Super League distribution, they should be given distribution from the Rugby League International Federation to grow the game in North America.
Yeah.
They should have a pot of money, say, you're not coming from Super League money, but we're going to fund you to make, and you're going to have targets to get the game grown on the grassroots in North America, and that there's got to be some way of them being financed. They can't all be just take, because it just won't work. It'll run out.
Yeah.
There's no endless supply of money anywhere.
No. And what they're doing is they're bringing people in who wouldn't watch rugby league.
Right.
On a smaller scale, you've got Newcastle and Coventry over here doing the same thing.
It's unbelievable.
And we've forever mined the pits of Wigan and Leeds and Cass and Hull to get our talented players, and that supply chain's diminishing, isn't it? Because they're not playing in schools anymore. Yeah. Kids have got more things to do. So we've got to find a way of building that gene pool back up again. And the only way you do that is by spreading your horizons. Yeah. And if you're getting kids playing in Canada who've never played again, that's one way. Coventry, Newcastle, London with the Scholars and the Broncos. Those are the clubs that have got to be really encouraged, because they are the clubs who are not just about the profile of the game, but they are the clubs who are actually introducing new talent into rugby league.
I think on a longer term vision for North America, all those players in that collegiate system, if you can get rugby league played in American colleges, and there's all those athletes, amazing athletes, and they're so committed, so professional. It's just like at such young ages, especially the kids who drop out of football programs, who could just pick up a rugby ball and use that. It's one of the few games that I've seen many kids at 14-year-old start playing. Danny Williams, 14-year-old, before he started playing rugby. He's playing at Leeds 3 or 4 years later, and it's a game that anybody can, with a good physique and with a bit of mental toughness, can develop later on in life. So there's no reason, in my opinion, why these American footballers can't be turned into great rugby league players.
Yeah. Well, there's a big fund of resources there, isn't there? So.
Last question before we break off. Are you excited about
I am excited.
I'm excited about anything. I'm excited. I'm just looking at it over there.
the tests coming up?
Fantastic. Going to be brilliant. So we got the test match, well, not the test match, but might be a test match against France on the Wednesday, aren't we, at Leigh Sports Village.
I hope it's well supported.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. I think there's an opportunity missed there. They could have taken that somewhere else, a bit of a development area, played England and France. But anyway, the 3 tests, all live on the BBC. Am I allowed to say that?
Of course you can.
Thank you. All live on the BBC.
Maybe bleep it out if we get told we have to.
And it's going to be great. I mean, New Zealand come again, don't they? After the disaster of the World Cup last year, they come again. I'll tell you what I'm really excited about, those 3. But Australia against Tonga. I think they've already sold 20 odd, 25, 26,000 tickets. And that, for me, you were talking about earlier about the magic of the Cup. If you'd have said, what's the best rugby league event you've ever been to, then that semi-final, England against Tonga at Auckland. And why they couldn't replicate that again, and they can now, because they play them again. I think there's 20, 30,000 Tongans live in Tonga, but the diaspora in New Zealand, I think there's about 30 or 40,000 actually in New Zealand. Yeah. And they never get the chance to cheer their own team on. And suddenly they've got a Tongan team there on the doorstep. And, it was mad. And that's going to be fantastic. But the England-New Zealand Test series is going to be pretty special. I think we're going to have to be good to beat them, because they, new coach.
Mick Maguire coaching for the Kiwis. He's obviously going to know the Burgess boys really well. Are you expecting all the Burgess boys to be in the squad? And can you give us any names that you think should be considered, maybe both for you, for the squad?
I hate these games.
In that 17, because obviously there's been a few lads picked it in and around the bigger picture squad. But who do you think is going to make it?
I don't know. It's interesting in the halves, isn't it? Because Widdop looks like being injured.
Yeah.
And Kev Brown's retired from International Rugby League. So is it going to be Williams and Gale? Or does anybody else get an edge?
Would you not give Richardson?
As Danny Richardson on the spot, because we were talking about him mid-season. I want him to go to PNG, because that's where I'm going. For that, I want to get some footage of him over there. But it'd be nice to see him take that step up. Is he ready yet, do you think?
I don't know. Well, you're the player. You've played against him.
Yeah,
he's getting big raps. Is he? I mean, one or two have suggested he's getting bigger raps than he deserves at this stage. Would you be in that camp?
I think when St Helens is playing well, he's good and he's a big part of it. And that's all they need, is a good team around him. And he'll be a good part of it.
To play out into the end of part 1, check out this little taster of what's to come for the Test series between England and New Zealand. We'll see you right here on Free Sports for more rugby in part 2 when we go to Toronto.